Oh my God, was my mic muted the entire time during that? No, see, wow. Um, I just had the intro of the century. I'll let you guys know that now. That was the best intro I think I've ever had, and I was muted during the whole thing. Okay, professional streamer here. That's fun. We need. We got to tweet this out. We got to tweet this out. Just had the best live stream intro of my life, and my mic was muted. And that's what I get for taking all week off, I guess. Well, that's fun. Anyways, so, one more time, we are live. We are live for my week 5 megacast. Instead of just doing 15 individual videos this week, I wanted to try something different, and that was basically going to be just one giant live stream encapsulating everything. It'd be pretty much the exact same content as what I would normally do. But I just wanted to try this instead because just trying to go through 15 games on an individual basis like that proved to be a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. So why not just sit down for a few hours and hash it out all in one? And then the plan is to actually move these back to Friday. That was the plan initially. And then spend Saturday chopping everything up and then uploading them as individual games if you guys like that style as well. So it's actually an extra video a week if you really want to think about it, but it's the exact same content. Again, leave all your questions down below for the live stream. If you have any week 5 start-sit questions, trade offers, or waiver wire pickups, I got my screens up here. Now we're rolling. I'm so mad. I'm so fucking pissed. Oh, I'm so mad that my mic was muted. Oh, but that stinks. All right. Let's roll, though, shall we? So I don't have a particular order for these. My notes are in terms of... Actually, I do have an order for these. My notes are in terms of game start time. So we got 1 o'clock first, and we're going to go through just the game Sunday, just as they naturally progress. But there is one game that I want to talk about first, so we're going to actually pull this off. The first game of my notes is Carolina and Atlanta, but there is a game that I want to talk about instead. Let me clear this. So we're going to talk about the Bills and the Titans first, but before I jump into that, Anthony has a question. Should I start David Johnson or Justin Jefferson? Let's pull this up. So it's the Texans versus the Jags and Justin Jefferson versus Seattle. Oh boy. Okay, Anthony. So you're gonna make me tilt a little bit already, and I'm now 4 minutes into this live stream. So David Johnson versus the Jags or Justin Jefferson. So the first thought here is actually, do you have anybody playing? I know if I'm looking here, remember I got all my data on this screen. Cameras here. It's a wonky setup regardless though. So my first question becomes, first off, how confident are you in your natural matchup versus your opponent? How confident are you there? Because Justin Jefferson to me screams ceiling play, whereas David Johnson, as I've talked about time and time again, David Johnson just has this consistent floor of 10 fantasy points, 11 fantasy points, because he's going to get, let's just say, 15 carries, 50 yards, and he's going to fall into the end zone once. So if you just need a safe play, I'd go David Johnson. If you want a more swing for the fences play, Justin Jefferson. But I'm actually going to lean. See, so all right, so you're confident. It's so funny. I love asking that question because multiple thoughts run through my head after that. It's questions like, okay, well, if you're confident, then you can play the safe play. But if you're really confident, why don't you kind of roll the dice a little bit and swing for the fences, right? I'm gonna pull something up here. Let me go to fantasy. All right. I'm going to pull up some. Right, so I knew this. All right, so the Jags give up 24.5 fantasy points to the running back position. But Seattle gives up 41 points to wide receivers. Take it from me, as somebody who is confidently starting Justin Jefferson this week, I'm all in. I'm all in on the continuation of the Justin Jefferson breakout. They're using him differently. They're playing him more outside. With the way that Seattle's offense has been moving, obviously, if Minnesota wants to win this game, they are going to have to score points as well. And I think just the upside in this game is higher than it is in Houston and Jacksonville. And in a game like this, where you got two guys with there are two guys where you should be confident starting either one of them, right? But I think just the upsides in either one are just so very, very different. For example, what is David Johnson's ceiling in this game? Is it 100 yards and a score, right? But what's the ceiling for Justin Jefferson in that game versus Seattle? Two scores and 120 yards, right? It's just the way that these games are expected to play out, especially because this is a flex question more than anything. I'm going to roll with Justin Jefferson between JJ and David Johnson. So I like that question to start this live stream. That's a really, really good one. All right, but let's move over to our first game, and that is going to be Buffalo and Tennessee. And the reason why we're going to start with this one first is simply because of the fact that this game is going to set the foundation for your lineup if you have anybody involved. I have Derrick Henry on a team. I am starting Derrick Henry this week, and that gives me nightmares. But here's the reason why I'm going to do it. Because I'm approaching this game. There's so much to talk about here. There's so much to unpack here. So if my thoughts are a little bit all over the place before this game specifically, that's why. So let's get this out of the way first. The Titans re-entered their building for the first time in a week and a half today. I forget the exact. I want to say it was Wednesday of. Wasn't even Wednesday of last week. It was Wednesday of 2 weeks ago, almost. Right? Thursday? Regardless, at a minimum, the Titans haven't been able to practice in person for a week and a half. And now, they have to have multiple straight days of no positive cases. They've had back-to-back, so they were reopening their facilities for a Saturday practice. So probably going to practice Sunday, walk through Monday, and then leave and take off for the Tuesday night game versus Buffalo. I'm scared. I'm not scared to play a Titans player this week. I'm not scared. I'm scared that this game is going to get canceled. There's just this thought in the back of my head of what happens if a player tests positive on Sunday or Monday or hell even Tuesday, right? I think Tuesday is the big fear because if it's Saturday or Monday, you actually can find ways to pivot between the Sunday night and let's just say Monday night games because there are multiple now at this point. So with that being said, just have contingencies, right? And this advice is dependent upon every single league and whatever your COVID protocols are that you have established within your league. For my league where I own Titans players, we don't have any. And why? Don't ask me. I've been begging for it for months, for weeks, and we have nothing. I was told when the COVID cases for this week specifically, with the idea of this Bills and Titans game being pushed back, I texted my group message again. I said, "Hey, what happens if I want to play? What happens if I want to play Derrick Henry, who plays on Tuesday now, and this game gets canceled? Am I just dead?" And my response from my commissioner is, and I quote, "You are assuming the risk by playing him. If you opt out of playing him, then you are opting into the pandemic." And there were words exchanged after that. There was a threat of a possible boycott. I was close. I was very, very close to boycotting this week. But that's not my natural DNA. As much as I want to throw a fit that we don't have COVID protocols, my way to stomp on this league is to do just that. Like when this league pisses me off, I just want to win even more. So, luckily I have pivots, and the pivots for Derrick Henry for me are Monday night. I have Josh Kelly on my bench, and then I also have Justin Jefferson as a possible flex option as well, unironically enough. And I was also able to maneuver some lineup changes around too, just in case anything else happens. So luckily enough, I do have the flexibility to keep trucking, but this game is all dependent on whatever you have in terms of depth. If you have Derrick Henry, if you have A.J. Brown, and you have a player that plays Sunday night, maybe you do have a Justin Jefferson, or if you have a Monday night, maybe you have, who would you even have? Mike Williams, is Mike Williams even playing this week? a Justin Jackson or a Josh Kelly or maybe even Emmanuel Sanders on your bench too, right? It's all about flexibility here and whatever your league's protocols are. If this game is being played, I'm fine. Obviously, you start your Bills. You're going to start Josh Allen. You're going to start Stephon Diggs. You're going to start Devin Singletary. So fine with those starts. For the Titans, how do you approach this game? Like you have to start Derrick Henry. Because if anything, the way that the Titans are going to approach this game is they're just going to try and kill clock and just really control the time of possession. So you're starting Derrick Henry. A.J. Brown was a full participant in practice today, so expect him to play. I'm trying to find ways to work him back into my lineup. Ryan Tannehill's been fine as a starter. Jonnu Smith is in your lineup. But just the issue right now is just it's a Tuesday night game. And these are decisions that you are unfortunately going to have to be making on Sunday before 1 o'clock for the most part. Hopefully you do have hopefully you do have flexibility and you do have some other options just in case something breaks. But as of now, this game is expected to be played, and just proceed with caution. I think that's just the big advice here: is proceed with caution. Know your flexibility. Know your ins. Know your outs. I want to spend some time actually, and I want to talk about the roster moves that I made in order to make this happen. So I actually have my text written out here. This is what I sent to a friend after I spent pretty much all day Thursday tilting because I had Ronald Jones and I felt like Ronald Jones had a pretty good matchup versus Chicago, knowing Leonard Fournette. At the time, I thought Leonard Fournette wouldn't play. Turns out he was going to, but he really was a case of emergency running back in that game. So I was basically deciding between a combination of the following players for my lineup this week. It was a combination of Derrick Henry, Ronald Jones, Josh Kelly, Justin Jefferson, Antonio Gibson, Robert Woods, and Allen Robinson. And these were all decisions that really were predicated upon each other, especially I had two players, obviously, with a potential to play on Thursday. I had one player playing Monday night in Josh Kelly, and I had another in Derrick Henry playing Tuesday. Justin Jefferson's playing Sunday night. It was just chaos, and I had no real idea what to do. So what I decided to do, I really just kept shuffling things around to find things that I really liked. And so what I ended up doing was I moved Ronald Jones to my running back 2. Like I said, the opportunity, I knew Ronald Jones would get 20 carries, probably get anywhere between 70 and 100 yards, and maybe fall into the end zone. For the record, he did, in fact, score a touchdown, but the refs didn't call it. So I moved Ronald Jones into my running back 2. I moved Justin Jefferson from my flex to my wide receiver 2. I benched Allen Robinson. I benched Robert Woods. I played DJ Chark in my wide receiver 1. And then I put Derrick Henry as my flex. I also have Todd Gurley starting at running back 1, I should say that. So I moved Derrick Henry to my flex to have ultimate security in 7 different pivots. So if any news were to have broken for this Titans game during any point during the course of the next few days, I can move. I can move Josh Kelly into my flex. I can move Robert Woods into my flex. I can move Deebo Samuel into my flex. I just have options, and that's basically how I was playing this. Just giving myself as many options as possible. Antonio Gibson's another name as well. It was just an absolute nightmare, all things considered. But that's my advice for this game. It's basically just have options. Have options, have pivots, and just stay the course. Just stay on your phone. Turn all your Twitter notifications on, and just stay on the phone because you need to be able to make moves as soon as news is announced. All right, but let's actually talk about the games that matter here, shall we? Let's go up. Let's see. Where are we going to start? All right, we're just actually going to go right down the list here. We're going to disregard my notes here. All right, we're going to start off with the Eagles and the Steelers. The Steelers are favored by 7. The over-under for this game is 45 even. Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson were both limited in practice this week. However, Alshon Jeffrey is not playing. Let me pull up the report here on Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson is also out. I know I should have finalized these notes, but I wrote these like a day ago, and so I never had time to fully update them. So if I'm turning over here, I'm looking up injury reports. But regardless, I always know the outlook for games before I pretty much make my notes. So there's no injuries to note for the Steelers, which is nice. So for Philadelphia, I have concerns about the Eagles. Carson Wentz still hasn't looked good. Miles Sanders still hasn't looked great by all means. He's getting all the work, which is nice. And he's maybe the one thing that is keeping the Eagles above water. But even then, he hasn't done anything super spectacular for you so far this season. And then with Greg Ward and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and who are you starting for the Eagles? Like who are you starting for the Eagles? You are starting Miles Sanders, you are starting Zach Ertz, and that's it, right? You can't start Carson Wentz. You aren't going to start an Eagles wide receiver. We tried that last week with Greg Ward. That panned out and did nothing. You just can't, and especially versus a defense like Pittsburgh's, there's just no possible way to start anybody with a real level of confidence, right? Like, my notes for Miles Sanders are you're starting him because you have to, but I'm not excited about it. This was a team that held Saquon Barkley to 7 rushing yards. 7. And he was at -2 for the majority of that game, right? The Steelers really might mollywop the Eagles in this game. That would not surprise me whatsoever. So, speaking of the Steelers, though, you're starting Big Ben. You're going to start James Conner. You're starting Juju. You're starting Deontay Johnson, who's been cleared to play with that concussion injury. And then also, you're going to start Eric Ebron, a name who's been thrown out quite a bit this week. I considered picking him up in my league because I needed a tight end for the week. The Eagles versus tight ends are one of the worst teams in defending the position. They are, in fact, number 3. They are third worst. They give up 14.6 points to the tight end position. And largely in part of that was due to the 3-touchdown Tyler Higbee game. And then we just saw George Kittle go absolutely crazy on him last week as well. So this defense is definitely susceptible to that. And, of course, my camera just turned off. 1 second. I forgot I had to do a thing to make that not happen. There we go. All right. So I'm fine with Eric Ebron if you have to stream. Maybe you have Hawkinson. Maybe you picked up Tanyan, and now he's on a bye. So I'm cool with that. Let's see. Miles Sanders, Justin Jefferson, Kareem Hunt. All right, Garrett, I'll get back to you in just a second here. Let me finish this one up, and I'll answer your question. We'll probably do that. Do a game, answer questions. Do a game, answer questions. All right. So I really don't think there's actually too much here to add, right? You are starting the Steelers offense because you would normally do so anyway. The only difference is that you're now probably streaming Eric Ebron. He's just a fine tight end streaming option for the week. And of course, please start the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Please and thank you. Thank you very much. All right, Garrett, let's go through this real quick. Miles Sanders, Justin Jefferson, Kareem Hunt, pick 2. In PPR, this actually seems kind of easy to me. I'm starting Justin Jefferson, and I'm starting Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's now a top 5 running back. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that with Nick Chubb being injured. We'll talk about Kareem Hunt in just a second. So you're starting Kareem Hunt, no problem. And as much as I love starting running backs, I'd prefer to start 2 running backs over a running back and a wide receiver. In a situation like this, where Miles Sanders is facing the Steelers defense, which is just so utterly terrifying, and Justin Jefferson, on the other hand, is facing a Swiss cheese Seattle Seahawks defense, I'd easily rather start Justin Jefferson over Miles Sanders in this matchup, which is an absolute bananas thing to say if you were to tell me this was where he would be at entering the 2020 season. All right, let's switch games here real quick. All right, we're going to go to the Giants and the Cowboys. Oh, I really wish my notes were in order to match these. That would make my life so much easier. All right, let's roll here. Giants and Cowboys. Oh, this is actually, I love this game. I love this game so much. The Cowboys are favored by 9.5. The over-under for this game is 54 points. There's no injuries to note for either team. For the Giants, is Daniel Jones streamable this week? I think it's possible. If you followed me, you know that I'm not the biggest Daniel Jones fan. But in a game like this, where the Cowboys defense continues to just get absolutely torched, how are you not even the least bit intrigued by Daniel Jones? Like, it's so tempting to me. It is so tempting. I feel like if you guys remember the Daniel Jones game versus Tampa last year, where Jones had 4 touchdowns and he had, what was Jones' line? 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, but he also threw like 2 picks as well. I feel like we're in line for that kind of Daniel Jones game, admittedly, and I'm really excited about the potential of that. I think it's just, I love the matchup in theory. But are you actually able to have the confidence to do it? And I think I'm actually going to use this reference once or twice in my notes. But that's just the way that I see it right now, is how confident are you in actually playing Daniel Jones? Because this matchup is incredible, right? We can't overstate that. They are an awful defense that puts points up on the board, so it's going to be shootout every single game. And with that, Daniel Jones is a fine stream this week. That's just where we have to be, right? So, let's see. Moving over to... That's the wrong name. There we go. So, moving over to the wide receiver core then. Theoretically, you need to play them, right? You need to play Golden Tate. You need to play Darius Slayton. And you need to play Evan Ingram. They are all great plays this week on paper. But do we actually have the stones to do it? If you're desperate, maybe you have, let's see, Devontae Adams. Maybe you have Kenny Galladay. Maybe you have Marvin Jones, who probably shouldn't even be on your roster at this point. Maybe you have Allen Lazard, and you just need somebody now to fill this spot. I think you can do worse than Darius Slayton or Golden Tate, right? Like, this is a game that should just be an absolute shootout yet again. How is this game a 54 over-under is the actual question, right? Because the Cowboys' defense isn't good. The Giants' defense isn't good. What's the world where this over-under is only 54? Like, this should be 60. If it's 54, just down the middle, 27-27, and that just feels so low. Maybe, like, the expectation then has to be that the Giants aren't going to put points up on the board, right? If the over-under is 54... Like, what's even the reasonable outcome? 31-13? That doesn't even make sense. Like, that doesn't even add up. Good God. I'll probably end up doing some more looking into this later on tonight. But I need to know what Vegas's anticipated score for this game is going to be. All right, moving on to the Giants' backfield here. Devonta Freeman actually has some level of potential in a plus matchup like this. In a game versus a bad defense, in a game where the Giants are likely going to be trailing at some point, Devonta Freeman saw 4 targets, caught all 4 passes last week. Caught all 4 passes last week. He can get targets. I'm fine if you have to. I'm not excited about this Giants backfield. I've been saying you need to stay away from them at all costs. But if you absolutely have to play Devonta Freeman, then you can. I understand it. But I'm not excited about it, to say the least. I want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys real quick. I don't want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys starts of the week, because this is now entering week number 4 of me saying this, I believe. Start everybody. This is just how it's going the rest of the... I'm so glad that we have teams like Seattle, we have teams like Atlanta, we have teams like Dallas, where all of their defenses are absolute utter garbage, and their offenses are incredible, where they're literally getting into matchups where it's a race to 45. Because my advice here, and for the rest of the year, pretty much for all 3 teams, is just very simply start everybody, right? Dak, Zeke, CeeDee, Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz, Michael Gallup we're going to talk about in just a moment, but you get the idea, right? This is just how the Cowboys are going to have to win games this season. But, speaking of Michael Gallup, I have no idea what Michael Gallup's value is right now. I don't have a fucking idea. Like, it is so crazy to me that Michael Gallup emerged last season as a top 23 wide receiver. I think he finished at wide receiver 18 or so. I'll probably have to go back and double check that. But he legitimately finishes as a top 20 wide receiver, and then just falls off the face of the earth due to CeeDee Lamb. And I've talked about this previously, and I actually talked about this in my Dynasty preview going into the season. When the Cowboys selected CeeDee Lamb, that was, to me, the most frustrated I've ever been in any draft pick in any professional sports history. To me, it sealed the fate of Michael Gallup, and at the time, it also sealed the fate of CeeDee Lamb for me because it just didn't make sense, right? A three-headed monster with the Blake Jarwin buzz, Zeke. How are they going to get everybody the ball here? And it actually seems like now Michael Gallup is the odd man out. But he's still seeing 85% of snaps. He's still seeing 5 targets a game. He just hasn't done anything with them. So what is Michael Gallup's value? I don't know. Here's the one thing that I do know, though. I know that Michael Gallup is a very talented NFL wide receiver. I know he is young, and I know he's going to be very, very good. Like, there's no way this guy just has one season, then falls off the face of the earth just because another player comes in, right? Either if they trade him, if they decide to get him more involved, whatever the case is, it's only going to go back up for Michael Gallup. So with that being said, if you have the opportunity to buy low on Michael Gallup, go ahead and do it. And that's what I'm saying, but I don't know what the value is. I'm not going to give up too much. I'm not even going to try and make a fair offer per se. Obviously, you don't want to trade utter garbage for him, but if you can, by all means, go do it. But I just see it as it can only go up from here, but this is also going to just be a very, very tough situation because you'll never know when to start him. So if you need to start him, it's more swing for the fences play, and that's why I'm not willing to give up too much for him. Other than that, though, please start your Cowboys every single week. All right, moving on, switching games here real quick. I want to go to Minnesota. Minnesota and Seattle. I saw MI and I was like, oh, that's Miami. Nope, Minnesota popped up instead. All right, let's talk about the Sunday night game between the Vikings and the Seahawks. We are starting off with Seattle. Start everybody. You're starting Russ. You're starting Chris Carson, Metcalf, Lockett. Go ahead, play them all. You guys know how this works by now. You're going to keep playing them because they are all top 15 players. Honestly, what? Oh my God. Do the Seahawks have 3 top 5 players per position in fantasy right now? Because Russ is QB1, Carson is running back 4, and Metcalf I think is wide receiver 2 or 3. Oh my God. Good Lord. I love this team so much. I love the Seahawks. Let Russ cook has been so fun, even as somebody who owns Chris Carson in Dynasty, right? It's just been so fun because this is all the things that we knew that Russ could do if he was able to, and I also love the fact that they are winning while they're letting it happen, right? Because for me, the fear was what happens if they go to let Russ cook and then they start losing? Are they going to revert back to just handoff, pass on third down, handoff, pass on third down, right? So to see them win with this model is super, super encouraging for the future of DK Metcalf, for the future of Tyler Lockett, obviously for the future of Russell Wilson as well. So please start your Seahawks in this game. Going over to the Vikings, I think to me, this is also pretty simple because it's been the same advice for the past 4 weeks. You are starting Dalvin Cook. I was going to say something as well. We're going to get to that in just a moment. You're going to start Dalvin Cook. You're starting Adam Thielen, and you are starting Justin Jefferson. All 3 players should have excellent performances in this game. But in addition to those 3 players, we are going to throw a new name into the mix here, and you are going to start Kirk Cousins with confidence. Because this Seattle Seahawks defense, as just referenced earlier on in this live stream, the Seattle Seahawks defense is utter trash, giving up 41.8 points to the wide receiver position. Cousins has one of the better combination of wide receivers in the league. If we were to go down pair by pair, where do you rank Thielen and Jefferson at this point? Probably inside the top 10, all things considered. So they are definitely in the upper third of the league, but where they fall in there, I'm not entirely sure. That'd be a really fun video to make, ranking every team's duo of wide receivers. Ooh, I'm going to save that on the back burner. So it's the same advice though as always. You're starting Dalvin, Thielen, Jefferson, and this time you can actually start Kirk Cousins. But I need to throw this caveat in here because I actually do feel like it's super, super important. I don't know if you know this or not, but Kirk Cousins has a history of playing in primetime games. And that history is not a good one. So let me pull this up. Kirk Cousins record in primetime. There we go. This is from 2019, November 10th. Can we... Wait, what? There we go. Wait, what is happening here? Okay, I love the internet because you get two conflicting reports for every single thing, right? So, like, this reads one off the top from the Washington Post on November 10th, 2019. Kirk Cousins is 6-13 all time in prime time affairs, including a 4-9 record with Washington and a 2-4 mark with the Vikings. He is 2-4 on Thursdays, 1-0 on Saturdays, and 0-9 on Mondays. It's just something about primetime where Kirk Cousins does not play well. But the very next line below it is from a PFF article that says Kirk Cousins is at his best when the whole nation watches him. And I'm just so confused now at this point. Regardless, there is a world where Kirk Cousins shrinks during primetime games, and this being the Sunday night, this being the Sunday night game, just something to keep in the back of your head. I'm still starting Jefferson and Thielen and Cook with confidence. I'm maybe going to lower Cousins down a peg as a streaming option, just in case shit hits the fan here, but he does have a plus matchup versus this terrible Seahawks defense. Alright, next game on the docket right now is going to be, now we go, now we get Miami and San Francisco. Jimmy Garoppolo and Raheem Mostert are both expected to be back in this game, and to me, this is going to bump up Brandon Ayuk, it's going to bump up Deebo Samuel, it's going to continuously bump up George Kittle as well. Going from obviously Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard to Jimmy G is a bit of an upgrade. But the question for me here with San Francisco is really just one or two things. With Mostert coming back, and Tevin Coleman is still out too, at least as far as I know, for this game. Let's make sure. Can I? Come on, Command F. 49ers. There we go. Let's see here. Right, okay, so Tevin Coleman's still inactive, so I apologize for that. So with Raheem Mostert coming back, is the question actually, it shrinks it just a little bit, but I think the question is still there. What do you do with Mostert and McKinnon in this game? McKinnon's played super well. It's something that I necessarily didn't really expect. Just the way that he's come on post two injuries, nonetheless, two season-ending injuries. To bounce back like this and play the way that he has, I think he's pretty... If it weren't for Cam, McKinnon would easily be comeback player of the year, and I actually think that there is a chance that McKinnon is going to end up receiving this award when the year is all said and done. But how confident are you in starting either of them? From what we know, it only takes one play for Raheem Mostert to take it to the house. Same thing goes for Jarrett McKinnon. But I don't know what their usage is going to be. Granted, this is going to be a game where they should be ahead the majority of it. So if they do decide to run the ball and kill clock, they are both fairly good plays, in my opinion. But I just want to wait and see, right? Because we only got, I think, one game with the 49ers, we only got one game of the 49ers with McKinnon and Mostert before Mostert went down with that injury. So I want to take this wait-and-see approach real quick, honestly. I know this is a really good matchup, though. I want to take a wait-and-see approach with McKinnon and Mostert just to see what the backfield shakes out to be. I want to see what the involvement is, what the snap counts are, the total touches, and things like that, just so I can get a better understanding of what's going to happen going forward. Because, again, and I've talked about this before, I like to see if I'm unsure about something, I will wait and see. I want to take anywhere between 2 or 3 weeks just to get a full understanding of the situation. Because if I miss out on the breakout game for a player, I'm more than happy to have them for the rest of the season than to start them dud after dud and not know what to expect. With Jimmy G, you can play him this week. He is supposed to be back and healthy, ready to go. Deebo Samuel coming off of that Jones fracture. This is going to be game 2. Last week you only saw about 35% of snaps. Looked all right in them, but I just want to see what his progression is going to look like. I expect him to play around 50% of snaps or so, maybe even 60. I don't think he's going to get the full workload. I think that's actually going to take place. I think it's going to be this natural progression throughout the course of the season, so I'm not confident starting Deebo. Brandon Ayuk has had a lot of success with Nick Mullins, but not a lot of success with Jimmy G. Granted, we did only see about 1 game and a quarter or so of that. So I really want to see Ayuk develop some chemistry with Jimmy G before I'm confident throwing Ayuk in. He is one of the few players, though, who also gets rushing attempts as well. Like, I love that Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel are the exact same players. And the 49ers are literally going to run plays where the two go like this, and they go like this, and they go back like that. Like, it's going to be so much fun just because they are carbon copies of each other, and they fit Jimmy G's style so well. Let's see. Alright, Rain, I'll answer your question in just a moment. Let me finish up this game here. George Kittle, obviously start. For the Dolphins, Devontae Parker, for me, has entered the category where you must start him every single week. The volume is there. The air it out with Ryan Fitzpatrick is there. I'm all in on Devontae Parker for the rest of the season. Yes, he has battled some injuries, but it seems like every single time he finds a way to either fight through it and just come back. Like last week, he left the game with an ankle injury, and then he still finished with 100 yards and a score, if I'm not mistaken, putting up like 16 fantasy points, finishing as a top 20 wide receiver on the week. The only other player that there are actually two players I want to talk about real quick. Mike Gesicki, guys, I'm just done with it. I'm done with it. You can't rely on Mike Gesicki for your fantasy team week in, week out. You just can't do it. We've been waiting and waiting. The opportunity should have been there, but it just isn't. And now it's basically haunted you. It's burned you for 4 out of 5 games, or I'm sorry, for 3 out of 4 games. And this, in a game like this, for still a very good 49ers defense, that could continue to, or that trend could continue. I don't know how you can start Mike Gesicki with confidence at this point. If you want to bank on the fact that, hey, this ball has to continue to go to somebody, especially with Fitzpatrick slinging it, by all means, go ahead. And I actually do know that Mike Gesicki is second in the league in air yards, so that's always a good thing to see. That means that the points are soon to come. But at this point right now, I just can't start him with confidence. And that sucks because I know a lot of people loved him coming into this season. Another player who I can't start with confidence, but a player who I actually love, is Myles Gaskin, right? I've been banging the drum on Myles Gaskin for the past 4 weeks. And here we are, and I don't think you can start in this matchup. This is going to be a very tough game, I think, for the Dolphins, traveling across the country. Cross-country, still a very good 49ers defense despite their losses. And even still, the usage of Myles Gaskin is still just a bit all over the place. I don't understand how you go from getting 22 carries back down to 10, and then I think he only had 4 targets last week as well. Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe if they get down, obviously, he always has the ability to rack up those receiving yards because he is the pass-catching running back on this team. But I'm really not excited to start Myles Gaskin in this matchup. In fact, I personally am sitting him this week. Alright, so Rain asks, Dalton Schultz or Zach Ertz? To me, this answer is very, very simple. It's going to be Dalton Schultz. I love the usage for him. He's getting targeted left, right, and center. He's on the field. This is one of the best offenses in football. I'm all in on Dalton Schultz this week. Again, since you missed it, Rain, I talked about the Eagles and the Steelers already, and I'm really just not excited about any Eagles player this week. That Steelers defense is just too good. I understand that the Eagles wide receivers are out, so I get like that is probably a bump to Ertz, but considering the fact that Cowboys are probably going to drop 35 again this week, I like the touchdown potential of Dalton Schultz in this game. Alright, let's move on here. Ooh, this is a good game. Alright, let's talk about Vegas. Vegas and Kansas City. Where are my notes here for this game? Where are my notes? What? There we go. No? Dun dun. There we go. Okay. Listen, when you got 5 pages of notes, it's a lot to get through. Alright. Let's roll here. The Chiefs are favored by 12.5 points. The over-under for this game is 56. Bryan Edwards, he did not practice this week due to that ankle injury. Henry Ruggs was a full participant in practice this week, and Darren Waller was limited. Let's go with Raiders. Right. So Brian Edwards has officially been ruled out. Henry Ruggs is questionable. I expect Ruggs to play, and the Chiefs have no injuries of note. Darren Waller is also up and active. All right. So for the Raiders, you are starting Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller. Very easy starts. These are the plays that you start every single week for them. I still don't have any real confidence in any of the Raiders wide receivers because there's just so many of them, and I don't understand. I don't know how. Right, I talk about spinning the wheel of the Kansas City wide receivers every single week. Right, I've talked about this quite a bit. Where outside of Tyreek Hill, you're spinning this wheel between Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, and Sammy Watkins. Right, and you got a 33% chance of hitting. But when you go over to the Raiders, it's Ruggs, it's Zay Jones, it's Nelson Aguilar, it's Hunter Renfrow, it's Brian Edwards when healthy, right? So your odds in a wheel like that go from 33% to now 20% of hitting the guy. I would say that Derek Carr is a good start in this game, but historically Derek Carr has not played well against Kansas City. We've expected him to play well in some of these matchups over the course of the past few years, and he just really hasn't come through. He had one game in 2017, I believe it was, where he played pretty well, but outside of that, it hasn't been great. So as much as I would love to stream Derek Carr here, I don't think you can do it. I just don't. To me, like the note that I've written down here is Derek Carr makes more sense on paper than in reality, and that's just, I think that very much sums up where Derek Carr is currently at in his NFL career. In all honesty, I'm also not comfortable starting Henry Ruggs. If you guys have been around the channel, you guys have been watching me, and specifically my Raiders previews. I am a Henry Ruggs stan. He is my baby boy. He is my golden child. He is my golden child rookie for the year, right? But unfortunately, coming off of the hamstring injury and even the fact that he didn't really fully produce, even during the early parts of the season, in that game versus Carolina, he caught one 45-yard bomb and fell just short of the end zone. Maybe that changes the narrative around Henry Ruggs, all things considered. I'm just back to a prove it stance. Like, I need to see it first before I'm willing to throw him into my lineup. I know for a fact I started him personally the first 2 weeks of the season. He played fine in week 1. Had that down week and the injury in week 2. It is what it is. And here he is back on the field now in week 5. Hopefully healthy and just fully ready to go. Hamstring injuries are always a bit scary just because they are things that can reoccur. You guys have seen this with Devontae Parker. You've seen it with Julio. You've seen it with Devontae Adams, right? It's just kind of the natural state of these injuries, unfortunately. So I'm just back to, for Ruggs, if you're still rostering him in redraft, just take either a wait-and-see approach or take a wait-and-see approach, or honestly, you can probably cut him at this point. Truly, and that hurts for me to say. It really, really does, as a Henry Ruggs stan. All right. For the Chiefs, though, let's get fired up. Start everybody. Another team where I get to say just start everybody makes my job so much easier. I can literally do this. We're just gonna put the feed up real quick, and I can say start everybody. You're gonna start Patrick Mahomes. You're starting Tyreek. You're starting Travis Kelce. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to fucking feast this game. The Raiders are the worst run defense in the NFL, just ahead of Carolina. And I tried to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire all week. All week, I sent a few monster offers in my Dynasty League to try and get him. Because I felt like the expectations for Clyde Edwards-Helaire have been up here, and he's performed like right here. But the expectations were so high that I know a lot of people are getting really frustrated about his performance. But at the floor, right? At his floor, he is a running back 12. Like, that is so good. And we don't even know what the ceiling is yet for him. And honestly, the ceiling is probably running back 1 at the end of the year when it's all said and done. But you basically, to me, had a 1-week window to buy low on Clyde Edwards-Helaire before he goes absolutely insane during this game versus Las Vegas. It's going to be so much fun. I think this really is going to be the Clyde Edwards-Helaire breakout game. We saw it in week 1. Subsided after that, but I think the train is going to be locked and loaded and just zooming through the tunnel in week 5 versus the Raiders. All right, let's answer some questions here. All right, Brandon Kinsey, friend of the program, also my Dynasty League mate as well. Half-point PPR, Deontay or Jonathan Taylor. Deontay's playing Philly. Jonathan Taylor is playing Cleveland. I think you go Deontay. right? I'm just not scared of the Eagles. I'm not scared of the Eagles. I expect Pittsburgh to be in control of this game comfortably. There's no reason that Deontay Johnson should have a bad game, especially because he is seeing 30% of the Steelers' targets. I'm in on Deontay this week, and just with Jonathan Taylor, I'm still staying the course with him. But the fact that Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins are still seeing 9 carries each, plus additional snaps on top of that, is just so frustrating to me. As much as I love JT, I know your team is in the spot where you don't have to start him. So that's good going forward. Like, I'm tired of talking about your dynasty team, Brandon. I really, really am. All right, let's see. We'll get one more questions here, and then I'll jump back into games here. Let's see. Troy says, out of these names, which 2 should I start for now and the... Oh, I love questions. I've never gotten a question like this. Should I start for now and the future? Damian Harris, James White, Hardman, Aguilar, Zacchaeus, Kirk, Schultz, Khalif Raymond, Traquan, and Logan Thomas. Okay. Alright, so here's how I'm going to break this up. Troy, does now mean week 5? Because I think that answers how I answer this question. I think it changed to that. If now is week 5 and the future is like rest of season, I think this gets interesting. I'm going to continue to move my mic all over the place. I'm sorry. So I'll wait for you to respond. But just going off of this right now, Damian Harris with Sony Michel in the IR. Yeah, right. So now is week 5. So with Damian Harris going on, I got a bone to pick with Damian Harris. Not specifically him, but actually with the Chargers. I'll talk about this when I get to my Chargers preview. Or New England, one of the two. Damian Harris is an auto start for me. I shouldn't say auto start. I'm very, very confident starting Damian Harris now and the future. How's that with Sony Michel going on IR due to his injury, and Damian Harris coming in off of the pup last week and getting an automatic 17 carries for 100 yards. Damian Harris is better than James White. He's better than Rex Burkhead, and I just have a lot of confidence in Harris going forward throughout the rest of the season. But I also have a lot of confidence in Harris this week versus the Broncos as well. James White, no, for neither, not now or the future. Mecole Hardman, Hardman scoring touchdowns in back-to-back games. The usage isn't there yet. I actually want to pull that up. Let's go. I'm pulling up Hardman's usage. I should know this off the top of my head as a Hardman owner in Dynasty, but let's see. Yeah. So his usage is still a bit all over the place. 30% of snaps, 66, 39, and 48. But the thing is, whenever he is on the field, he is always involved. Like, they literally manufacture him targets, right? We saw basically back-to-back weeks where he was being looked at. Even last week versus New England, like 4 targets, 4 receptions, 27 yards, and that touchdown. But when he is on the field, they're looking for him. So I like Hardman long-term. The only issue with him is that you never know when to start him. For me, I love Hardman in the sense of if I'm facing my league's juggernaut and I need that ultimate swing for the fences play, Hardman is that guy who I'm going to start. Just having that ability to literally take a 40, 50, 60-yard touchdown to the house. The thing that, I forget, someone said it this week. I want to say it was Mike Wright of the Footballers. I want to say his line was, when you play Mecole Hardman, you have the chance of scoring a touchdown every single week, right? Or every single game, rather. And yes, that is theoretically true for every single player that you start. But with Hardman, it's just different. It's just very different of, I'm going to take the bet. I'm going to take the shot on Hardman when you throw him in your lineup. Aguilar, neither. I'm not starting Aguilar at all, now or the future. Zacharias, neither. I just think that's the thing. With Julio Jones being inactive, that's why he was being targeted. Christian Kirk, neither. It's DeAndre Hopkins or nothing for Arizona right now. Dalton Schultz, now and the future. You can play him either, like, he applies for both. Khalif Raymond, it's been 1 week. I'm not confident in him for now or later. Traquan Smith is only a now thing. If Michael Thomas isn't back, and I expect him to play this week Monday night versus the Chargers, and then Logan Thomas now or the future. I think Logan Thomas is probably a future play. He's still getting the targets that we need, but I want to see what happens with the quarterback change. Does Kyle Allen look to throw to him? Does Alex Smith potentially look to throw to him? There's just a lot of uncertainty revolving Logan Thomas. Even though he was getting the targets, he just wasn't getting anything done. For me, Logan Thomas is a hold if you have him. I wouldn't look to cut him, but maybe after this week, depending on what the targets look like, with Kyle Allen leading that team, then you can make your decision after that. Do I know what a vampire league is? I do not. So please enlighten me as I go to this next game, which is going to be Carolina and Atlanta. Let's roll. All right, this is actually a really fun game. Because, again, for the 4th straight game now I get to say this? For 3 out of 4, start everybody for Atlanta. Like, just do it. Please, for the love of God, just do it. Julio Jones, I don't think is going to play with that hamstring injury. I should leave with that. Do not start Julio Jones. You will get 0 fantasy points. Julio didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. I don't know if he practiced Friday. And then Calvin Ridley was limited in practice all week. He's going to play. He'll battle through. The Falcons are favorites at 4.5, and the over/under for this game is 55. There are no injuries to note for the Carolina Panthers. So for Atlanta, you're starting everybody: Matt Ryan, Todd Gurley, Calvin, Hayden Hurst, like everybody in this matchup. Just because, again, this defense continues to get absolutely shredded. This defense continues to get injured as well. So with that, like, please, just go ahead. Go ahead. This is actually the 5th straight week of me saying start everybody for Atlanta. I love teams like this because because of fantasy football, I'm so much more of an offensive person than a defensive person, and just my natural personality leans that way anyway. So where I get games like this, where the answer is start everybody, and then again, I just get to put my feet up and enjoy a shootout of a game. Oh, it brings me so much joy. So that's what I'm doing with Atlanta. I don't think there's a whole lot that needs to be said. Actually, there's one more thing that needs to be said. Oh, you're also starting Russell Gage if you got him. But the thing that I want to talk about real quick is Hayden Hurst. For 4 weeks, Hayden Hurst hasn't really come through for you, and that stinks because he was a guy that I personally loved this offseason. He was a guy I was targeting in many of my drafts. If he can't get it done here versus Carolina, and Carolina admittedly is fairly good against tight ends. I think they're ranked 9th or so against them. If he can't get it done here, I think you can safely drop Hayden Hurst. But the issue is who do you pick up? Do you then just start streaming the position? Is there somebody that's sneakily still on your waiver wire? I think it all depends on who's on waivers right now for you to make that decision about Hayden Hurst. I know for my league right now, I'm actually a bit on the fringe. I dropped Hurst. I've talked about this last week. I dropped Hurst for Tanyan. Great play by me. Ended up winning my matchup because of that. And then just looking at Hurst and just some of the other options here, I'm not entirely sure what to do with him going forward. But I feel like this game is actually going to be the last straw for him because he hasn't gotten the targets, he hasn't gotten the production, and it's been a really disappointing season overall for Hayden Hurst so far. For Carolina, there's no injuries to note for Carolina outside the obvious of Christian McCaffrey not playing again. You are starting Mike Davis. You are starting Robbie Anderson. Teddy Bridgewater is a great streaming option this week because of how awful that Atlanta Falcons defense is. And with DJ Moore, I know there's been a lot of concerns here about him. For me, I'm playing him again this week. I'm going to go down with the ship. If he can't get it done in this matchup versus Atlanta, that's when I will really start to reconsider my stance on him going forward through the rest of the year. But he has a prime opportunity to re-cement himself as a focal point in this Carolina Panthers offense. And hopefully, I pray to God that he takes the opportunity and seizes it, because this could be the chance to get him and Bridgewater on the same page going forward. So I'm really excited about the potential of DJ Moore this week. All right, so let's go back to the chat real quick. Let's see. Vampire League is one where the vampire can't draft, only uses waivers and builds their team from the waivers. They can make their schedule, and if they beat someone, they get to take their best player. That's interesting. Oh. Oh, wow. Interesting. I really like that. So you can't, right, so you can't draft. So my question then becomes, what happens, so if it's week 1, right, before week 1, is it just everybody then just pulls team from waivers? Is it Fab Run? Is it Fab Run? Is it waiver wire ran? Like, what is the formula for it? I'm gonna look into more of this. I'm gonna write a note of this because that's very intriguing. All right, let's go to this next game, shall we? And that is going to be, speaking of Logan Thomas from just a few minutes ago, that is going to be the Rams and Washington. So let's pull. There we go. The Rams are 9-point favorites here. The over-under for this game is 45.5. All 3 of the Rams running backs are healthy. Cam Akers coming back from that rib injury. Kyle Allen is starting for Washington. And there are no real injuries of note for either team, which is really nice, especially during this part of the season with COVID and all the other injuries stacking up. So going through this real quick. For the Rams, you are going to start Cooper Kupp. You're going to start Robert Woods, and you're going to start Tyler Higbee as well. This is the game where, yes, the Washington defense is pretty good. I don't really have any cause for concern for either of those 3 players. I think you can start them with confidence just in this week. It's just for me, this game feels like so standard, right? So such a middle ground matchup, all things considered, to where it's just gonna be a typical, yep, you're gonna play them. No real reservations or concerns about it whatsoever. But I'm also not over the moon and thrilled to play them. They're just like a pretty standard start for me, all things considered. I am avoiding the Los Angeles Rams backfield at all costs. I won't do it. I won't do it. I'm not going to try and outsmart Sean McVay. For me, the Rams, if I were to own a Rams running back, the answer is neither. The answer is none of them. Like, I don't want to have this headache. And I'm somebody who loved Cam Akers coming out of college, and I loved his landing spot of the Rams, but I just won't do it right now. I won't do it. Between Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson, and now Akers back, I'm staying away. I'm just gonna slide this way. I have no real interest in trying to decide and decipher through which Rams running back to start. So I'm going to take the Jordan Marige route and say none of them. So, going over, actually, Jared Goff is also a fine streaming option in this game if you need one. I prefer Bridgewater. And Daniel Jones over. I prefer Bridgewater, Jones, and Cousins over Goff. But if you need to start Jared Goff, because maybe all 4 of those guys or 3 of those 4 are taken, Goff I think should be okay in this game. For Washington, we're gonna cut to the chase here. Kyle Allen is starting. I don't know what that is going to. I don't know what that is going to look like. Excuse me. But I do know that Kyle Allen targets 1 wide receiver. And last year it was DJ Moore. This year it's going to be Terry McLaurin. So you're starting McLaurin. And also, Antonio Gibson has officially reached the point where he is a weekly starter. So, woo! This is something that we all project throughout the course of the offseason. And to see it finally happen now, double-digit fantasy points in 3 straight games. You'll love to see that for a rookie running back who's finally getting the opportunity, even though his snaps are still at like 45%. So I pray to God those numbers continue to go up that way, because if he gets more and more on the field, that consistency is going to be so nice to have, especially if you were drafting early and you were able to get him in that 8th, 9th round territory. All right, let's go back to the chat here, because honestly, this game is pretty standard as well. Oh, it's only 1 or 2 teams that are the... So, I like that. So you use Fab. It's only 1 or 2 teams that are the vampire. We use Fab in the league. I like that in the sense of, if you're somebody... Can I use myself as an example for this? I like that in the sense of if you're somebody like me where you study this shit religiously, right? Throughout the course of the year, and you live, breathe, eat, and sleep fantasy football. I love the idea of getting a group of people who've never played, elect yourself as the vampire, and you try and construct that roster. You try and get those 9 or 11 other people acclimated to fantasy. Get their feet wet a little bit and really just teach them how the game works. But then you also at the same time are trying to build your team from the ground up. That seems really, really fun. I'm going to steal that idea for next year, I think. That'd be a really, really great idea to implement for this. Let's see. Troy asked, what are your thoughts about Darius Slayton or Henry? I'm sorry, both this week, and that's why. I think Hunter Henry should be fine. Justin Herbert is going to have to target him a little bit more, especially with the injury to Austin Eckler. And he was still seeing about 5 to 7 targets even before Eckler went down. So I'm confident starting Hunter Henry this week, especially if Mike Williams is out, which I think he is. So Henry, fine. Darius Slayton. My notes for the Giants, I already covered it, but just to reiterate, on paper it makes sense to start him just because of how bad this Cowboys defense is, but I just don't know the confidence that I have in it. If you have the stones to play Darius Slayton, by all means go ahead, because he could easily go off this week against the Cowboys. But it wouldn't necessarily shock me if the Giants dud for the 5th straight week. I'm a bit scared. I'm a bit scared starting just Giants in general. It's one of those things where it makes to me it makes more sense on paper than in reality. But you got to do what you got to do. Desperate times, desperate measures, especially with bye weeks and injuries and COVID all going on right now. Sometimes you got to make those tough decisions, and you have to be willing to start the guys who you are uncomfortable starting naturally. All right, one last question from Mitchell here, and then we'll move on to the next game. So is Mike Thomas startable? All right, so we're going to. All right, I'll answer this now. That's fine. And what's my next game actually? Oh, fuck it. Yo, Mike, thanks for the segue. Or I'm sorry, Mitchell. My bad. Thanks for the segue, Mitchell, with Mike Thomas. We're just going to talk about this game right now, shall we? So, the Los Angeles Chargers are taking on the New Orleans Saints Monday night. New Orleans is favored by 7.5. The over/under for this game is 52. Michael Thomas was a limited participant in practice all week with that ankle injury, and it's officially Justin Herbert's season. Head coach for the Chargers, Anthony Lynn, came out and declared Anthony Lynn the starter. Came out and declared Justin Herbert the starter. And to that I say, holla fucking luya. I've been begging for this for weeks. If you guys are subscribed and you guys have watched previous content of mine, you guys know this. I was screaming from the rooftops. The answer for Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler and Hunter Henry's fantasy success rests in the hands of Justin Herbert, who has looked incredible during the early part of his NFL career. So I'm really excited for Herbert going forward. I'm really excited for the Chargers going forward. It sucks that Austin Eckler is now out with that hamstring injury. The team officially placed him on IR earlier today. So let's go over this game real quick, and we'll get into Michael Thomas and some other players in this match as well. So starting off with the Chargers, you're starting Keenan Allen, and you're going to start Hunter Henry. This is just a game where I think that it's going to be pretty close, but it's going to be a bit high scoring as well. I kind of expect the final score to be somewhere between 21 and 31 points, so there is definitely going to be opportunity here for touchdowns. So we're going to start Keenan Allen, who has absolutely been a target monster since Herbert took over. I'm all in on Keenan Allen this week, and Hunter Henry gets a bump up with the loss of Austin Eckler. Josh Kelly and Justin Jackson, I think if you have to, I lean Josh Kelly of the two. Again, desperate times, desperate measures. I have Josh Kelly on my bench currently, but if that Bills and Titans game gets postponed, Kelly's being thrown into my lineup. And that's more so a pivot due to time as well, just being that Monday night game and having ultimate flexibility. I'm not going to shy away from Josh Kelly, but I'm just going to really evaluate my running back position. If I feel like I have to start him, I'm going to do it. But if I feel like I have another option, I may look that way as well. Going over to the Saints now. Breeze, Kamara, you're in, obviously, automatically. And with Michael Thomas being questionable for this game. Do we know if he officially declared as playing? Let's go. Let's see. Yeah, Michael Thomas is questionable. I think... Alright. You're not going to like my answer. Mitchell, you're not going to like my answer. You have to play Michael Thomas because of... You have to play Michael Thomas because he's Michael Thomas. It's kind of the same thing with Julio and Devontae Adams. If they're active, they're in your lineup. And this is just a pill that you have to swallow. It kind of comes with being a top-tier wide receiver. Just coming off of injury. Just if you have to close your eyes, by all means, go ahead. I'm actually going to take these off because I don't need these on right now. If you have to close your eyes, by all means, go ahead and do so. I don't blame you. It is tough, though, with the wide receiver coming off of an injury like that. But if Michael Thomas is active, like, he is the focal point of the offense. And yes, we've seen Kamara do a great job of replacing him in that way. But it's going to be the Michael Thomas show if he's on the field. And with that being said, you have to be able to start him with some level of confidence if that is the case and he is out there. So I'm actually going to play Michael Thomas if he's back. I do expect him to play, so he's probably in my lineup. I don't feel great about it by any means, but he's Michael fucking Thomas at the end of the day, and that counts for something in fantasy football. So I'm fine with starting Thomas this week. Same for Raheem Mostert. With Mostert and McKinnon, I said the exact same thing. I want to stay away. And the reason why I'm staying away is simply because of the fact of we've only seen one. It was basically 1.5 games with them both on the field, and I need to see a bigger sample size between the two in order to really get a feel of what this backfield is going to look like. I cannot talk. I need a sip. Hang on. So I'm waiting to see how this backfield shakes out. I just need to get a better understanding of what it's going to look like moving forward before I have any confidence starting Mostert or McKinnon on a week-to-week basis going forward. All right, let's. What else is there for this game? Like, there's really not much. Emmanuel Sanders is just one more thing that I want to bring up here. We've now had back-to-back great Emmanuel Sanders games, and I mentioned this last week. There was a quote that came out from him on a podcast where he said that his first touchdown with Drew Brees, they called it the icebreaker. And the reason why was because they never had time this offseason to work out together, to really just mesh and gel and build that chemistry. And Sanders said when he caught that touchdown pass from Brees, they went up to each other, like dapped up, congratulated each other on the score. But then Brees told Sanders that was the icebreaker. And since then, we saw Sanders ball the fuck out last week. So, I am very, very intrigued in Emmanuel Sanders going forward the rest of the season. If Thomas is back, Traquan Smith cannot be played. I would rather play Sanders over Traquan Smith. But just Sanders going forward, I'm really just trying to keep a watchful eye on, because I'm sure he's probably on your waiver wire, and if he isn't, he's probably on a team where you might be able to get him on the low for low. And this is a guy who could easily be a top 36, top 24 maybe, wide receiver the rest of the season if that chemistry with Brees continues to develop. All right, let's move on to the next game. We'll get back to answering some questions here. So where are we? All right, we got CC Killian 2K, Antonio Gibson or Miles Sanders, and Schultz or Higbee. I'm starting Dalton Schultz over Higbee. Very, very simply put. The Cowboys offense is going to drop 35 this game, and I want as many opportunities to put points up on the board as possible for my tight end. And then Antonio Gibson or Miles Sanders. I'm starting Gibson. I'm starting Gibson over Miles Sanders. I don't love that matchup for the Eagles against the Steelers defense. I don't think that the Eagles are going to be able to compete in this game almost whatsoever. Like, there's a very, very small chance I find this game to be actually competitive. Wentz still hasn't looked good. There's no receivers on this team, which is probably an increase in floor in Miles Sanders. But even still, this is the defense that held Saquon Barkley to 7 fucking rushing yards. And that's not a game that I want to have any part of the Eagles. I have very little confidence starting anybody on that team. Antonio Gibson, on the other hand, we've seen 3 straight weeks of 10 plus fantasy points, double digits. We love that, even though he was only seeing 45% of the snaps. And another thing with Gibson that I didn't mention in the Washington segment was the fact that with Kyle Allen coming in as quarterback, Kyle Allen is a great check down thrower. Like, it's just what he does. He has the ability, and yes, unfortunately, I can say this because I watched Kyle Allen multiple times last year as a Carolina Panthers fan. Allen does this thing really, really weird, where there are times where he's just a check down machine, but then there are other times where he stays in the pocket way too long and just either throws a really, really errant throw or just gets hit and fumbles. It's really bizarre, the consistent contrast between the two, but there is definitely room for Gibson to play really well as a receiver coming out of the backfield in this game. So I'm going to go with Gibson over Miles Sanders. And then let's see. We got Antonio Gibson, Jefferson, or Lamb at flex. Oh. I can speak on this personally. I'm playing Justin Jefferson over Antonio Gibson this week personally at my own flex position. I'm just going to continue to roll the dice against the Seattle Seahawks defense until they prove me wrong. I'm starting everybody against the Seahawks. We've seen it for 4 straight weeks now, probably a fifth versus Minnesota, where they just get absolutely cooked. And that's the opportunity that I want every single week from my flex position. I talked about this earlier. The Seahawks are giving up 41.8 fantasy points to the wide receiver position, which is by far and away the most in the NFL this year. And they are literally on pace to give up a record in yards to the wide receiver. So I'm all in. I'm all in on the Vikings this week. All right, let's go over to another game here, shall we? All right, let's go Jacksonville and Houston. This is game 1 of the Texans without Bill O'Brien. Shout out to them. I got a text from my friend who is a Texans fan. I cannot think right now. From a text from my friend who's a Texans fan. Where are my notes here for this game? I got 1. The Texans are favored by 6. It's a 54-point over-under. There's no injuries to note for either team, so we love that. For Jacksonville, you are starting James Robinson and DJ Chark. If you have to, like me, I'm starting Gardner Minshew this week as well. This game is going to be predicated on the run. I think for both teams, they both have really great running matchups between David Johnson and James Robinson. So I'm fine starting both of them this week. With James Robinson, obviously, he's been the fantasy waiver wire pickup of the year, and it hasn't even been close. So I'm fine with Robinson. Chark, not double digit, 2 touchdowns last week. I expect him to be continuously involved in this offense moving forward. I feel like they really found that formula last week where it was, all right, wait, Chark is the focal point of the offense. It went back to that, and they played pretty well last week, all things considered. Gardner Minshew, 20-plus fantasy points in 3 out of 4 games. The only game where he didn't was that dud game Thursday night against Miami. But other than that, he's been very, very solid for fantasy football purposes. He's currently a quarterback 1 at QB 12, which is everything I was saying entering this season, saying that Gardner Minshew is going to be a top 10, top 12 quarterback this year. He has all the makeup to do it between the coaching with Jay Gruden as the offensive coordinator and his history with Kirk Cousins and Andy Dalton. You look at the team around him and just that defense being bad, they're going to have to trail from behind and put up points in order to win, come from behind in order to win, rather. And then also the weapons with Laviska Shenault, James Robinson now, and DJ Chark, Keelan Cole, D.D. Westbrook, who obviously isn't great, RIP. There is just room here for Minshew to continue to play well throughout the course of the season. So I'm still confident starting Minshew if you got him. Let's see. Laviska is a fine play, but I want to see more from him personally. He's still only getting on the field about 50% of snaps right now, and he's doing great things with his snaps. But I want to see more. I want to see more because we've seen the glimpses of it, but it just hasn't come together fully in the way that I want it to where I'm confident starting him week in and week out. Moving over to the Texans now, you're starting Deshaun Watson. You're starting David Johnson, not Duke Johnson. You are starting David Johnson and Will Fuller, and this is where my Will Fuller apology has to come into effect. But before I do that, I want a sip of water. All right, I owe Will Fuller an apology. That was fun. Okay. I owe Will Fuller an apology. Dear Mr. Fuller, I'm sorry for doubting you. I'm sorry for doubting your inconsistency. I'm sorry for doubting your health. I'm sorry for doubting your value as a fantasy football wide receiver. I drafted you. I then released you after week 2, after your dud game against the Ravens, and I was wrong for that. And since then, you have then put up back-to-back fantasy weeks of 10+ fantasy points, and I am sad. You have played very well this season. Outside of that dud game, you've also been hurt with that hamstring injury, but despite that, you've been on the field. And that makes me sad, because you have played very well this year, and I was wrong about you. I don't like this. Like, Will Fuller to me is just a guy who I just couldn't get behind, right? Just the idea of this player, of who is going to get you 4 points or 1,000,000. It's very, very similar like to Mecole Hardman, right? Where you have the potential for a boom game, but you also have the potential for a bust game. But on top of that, you also have the potential for injury. And this is the way that I explained it. When you play Will Fuller, you are spinning the wheel of boom bust, and you're also spinning the wheel of injury. And that is like, it's fine to spin one wheel for a player, but to spin both of them is super difficult for me. Like, I don't want to do that every single week. And that's why I've always been scared to play Will Fuller, and I've never liked him for that reason. But for the first 4 weeks, he's played really, really well, and I got to give credit to where it's due. So I'm fine playing Will Fuller in this matchup. I'm done with Brandon Cooks, done with Randall Cobb until they actually prove it consistently, week in and week out. I'm interested to see what this team looks like without Bill O'Brien, though, and I'm actually really considering choosing them in my eliminator pool, where you pick one team per week. You can only use one team once. And this feels like a game where the Texans can end their losing streak. Being 0-4, they're due for a win. This feels like the game where they are going to get one after the coaching change. All right, let's see. No other questions in the chat here. Let's keep going then. Where are we? All right, Colts and Browns. Let's see. Where are my notes for this game at? All right. The Colts are favored by 2.5. The over-under of this game is 47.5, one of the lower for the week. No injuries to note for either team, outside of Nick Chubb missing anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks with that MCL injury. Thanks. Let's see here. I want to go through these real quick. All right. With the Colts, you need to continue to trust the process with Jonathan Taylor. And I know I was asked a question earlier in the stream of, am I starting Jonathan Taylor or Deontay Johnson? And I said Deontay Johnson. But the only reason why that is the case for that person specifically is because, like I said, he's my league mate, and I know what his roster looks like. But for 95% of other fantasy football players here, you are starting Jonathan Taylor every single week. Just stay the course. Just stay the course. Again, last week we saw 13 carries, or was it 2 weeks ago? 13 carries for him, and he finished as a floor of 13 fantasy points. It was a down game for him, and he still scored 13. So what's the ceiling then at that point? I'm really excited for Taylor moving forward. Why Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins continuously see work, I don't fucking know. They might just be a knife in your side throughout the rest of the season. But I'm fine starting Jonathan Taylor week in and week out moving forward, especially in this game versus the Browns. It's not a great matchup by any means, but with Jonathan Taylor and this rushing attack is the centerpiece of this Colts offense. Mo Alley Cox is my tight end stream of the week. He is the player who I picked up this week to start. And I was torn between Mo Alley Cox and Eric Ebron, and I ultimately decided on Mo Alley Cox simply because of the fact that I was looking at the Browns games versus tight ends, and I was looking at the Eagles games, and the Browns just gave it up more consistently. You looked at Drew Sample and C.J. Uzomah in week 2. Mark Andrews in week 1. Who did they just face? Dalton Schultz last week. And there was another game in there as well. Let me pull this up. Who can I type in? Hunt. And then Logan Thomas in week 3. Thomas didn't do much, but I had three games here where tight ends absolutely killed the Browns, and I'm going to go to MEGACAST for my stream of the week at that position. How do you feel about Bell now that he's playing? We'll talk about him in just a moment. I think they are one of the next games up that I'm going to talk about. Let's see here. What else for this game? I'm not starting T.Y. Hilton. I'm not starting Zach. I'm not starting anybody. I'm not starting any Indianapolis Colts wide receiver. I won't do it. I'm done with them. T.Y. Hilton, dead. Zach Pascal, dead. Paris Campbell, also dead, injury. Michael Pittman Jr., dead because of injury, right? Phillip Rivers had the opportunity to come out and look good, and he just has been fine, right? He hasn't been awful, but he hasn't been great either. And honestly, Mo Cox is the best receiving option on this team. I fully expect Cox to be able to get into the end zone once, if not twice, in this game. Moving over to the Browns, you're starting Odell. He's just roll with it. Like, you have to roll with it now at this point. I know it's always scary to start Odell Beckham these days, but this is a game where I just think you have to do it. Kareem Hunt is going to be a top 5 running back without Nick Chubb. Jarvis Landry has to stay on your bench. He's just not seeing the volume. I've talked about this before. Jarvis went from being the second option on a low-pass volume team to now the third option on a low-pass volume team, and he's just not a guy who I'm confident starting week in and week out anymore. And that stinks because I love Jarvis. I've talked about this all offseason. Jarvis is the guy who could have gotten 6 receptions for 65 yards. Oh, see. I got the mute button out. Jarvis is the guy who can consistently get 6 receptions for 65 yards and always has that opportunity for a touchdown. And he just doesn't have that same level of consistency or upside anymore. And that stinks. That really does stink because he was a guy who you could spot start week in and week out. And you just can't do it anymore. Let's see. But that's really it. Like, this matchup feels like a gridlock. These two teams are very, very similar. Just two teams that are going to run the ball. Don't have a whole lot of great pass volume, all things considered, or a high level of that. But the Browns have the advantage at the wide receiver position. But like, these two teams just feel very, very similar in where they're at, despite their records being opposite of each other. All right, let's go on to... Let's go back to the chat here. How do you feel about Bell now that he's playing? Don't start the Browns. The Colts' pass defense is amazing. Yes, that is correct. They are. But I don't know how you can sit Odell Beckham after what we saw last week, right? Like, Odell proved it. The issue with Odell entering last week is that we just weren't sure. And I felt like last week we were sure. And how do you see what Odell does last week and not start him this week? Again, it's Odell fucking Beckham, right? The potential is always there for games like last week, and that's not to say that he's going to always hit it, but you always have the option to hit it, right? It's always going to be there if he is able to either break free. Like, it only takes one play for him. It really does. Yes, that is the other, right? So you bring up a good point. The points are not coming from Baker. Yes, that is true. I actually saw Adam Rank tweet a video about this. The Browns put up 49 points last week, and Baker only had 15 fantasy points. That is correct. But we're still seeing targets for Odell. He's still getting the work. He's just got it takes one play. It takes one play. I'm fine with Odell this week. All right, let's go to another game here. All right. Denver and New England. Oh, boy. Another COVID game. Stephon Gilmore, COVID this week. Cam Newton may or may not. I really don't think Cam plays. I don't think Cam plays. I think they're just gonna start. I literally just think they're going to hold him out for one more week. This is the Broncos team that is fine. They are barely above water, all things considered. Drew Lock could play with that AC joint injury. He could not. I don't think he's going to play either. I think they are going to sit him for one more week. This game being on a Monday night, being pushed to Monday night, actually helps both quarterbacks potentially get back on the field. So that is a bit intriguing. But this is actually a game where I'm not excited about whatsoever, in all honesty. The over-under for this game, I actually couldn't find it. Remember, I was doing my notes a bit in advance, and there was no over-under listed. But the Patriots were favored by 11.5, and to me, that line expects that Cam Newton is going to be back in action, but I still just don't see it. Philip Lindsay is back and ready to go, so that's good. For Denver, I'm only going to start Melvin Gordon and Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy has looked really good as the team's number one wide receiver option. Obviously, with Rippon at quarterback, it does limit his ceiling just a little bit, and he was able to fall into the end zone last week versus the Jets, but that's fine. Rippon showed some things where he has the potential to look for a guy like Jerry Jeudy, and Jeudy can have success here in this game, especially if Stephon Gilmore isn't playing. Duh. So I'm fine with Jeudy. Melvin Gordon. Just the volume play. Yes, Philip Lindsay is back, but I don't know if they're going to. I don't expect them to give Lindsay the full load that he normally would be. I think they're going to ease him in this week. So Melvin Gordon should still be a fine play in this game. And the only player that I want to start from the Patriots, all things considered, if Newton is out, Newton is in this category. If he is active, is Damian Harris. Comes in with Sony Michel on the IR and gets 17 carries for 100 yards. And you will take that every single day, twice on Sunday, in this case, twice on Monday. This is another game for me that is pretty cut and dry, all things considered. How do you start any Patriots pass catcher with confidence here? With Brian Hoyer and what we saw from him last week with Jared Stidham. Stidham looked fine, but still, it's Jared fucking Stidham. Like, you just can't do it. Only in a desperate situation can you do it. Like Hugh, you make a really good point here. AJ Brown or Edelman. So here's exactly how I would approach that. I'm starting AJ Brown. I'm keeping Edelman on my bench. But if that Titans game gets postponed, then you have to put Edelman in your lineup. And that is how I'm playing it. I'm only playing Edelman if I absolutely have to. If I don't, I'm not doing it. I'm staying away. But again, this game's pretty cut and dry for me. There's not a whole lot for me to say here. This is just two teams right now with both bad quarterback play, potential bad quarterback play outside of Cam Newton, and just not a whole lot of offensive firepower from either team. All right. Let's go over to the Bengals and the Ravens. I've been getting a lot of questions about this game all week, and admittedly, I'm still not entirely sure what to do, and it is currently Saturday night at 10:30, so that's always a good thing, right? So let's go here. The Edelman. If Cam plays, I'm fine with Edelman, but I don't expect Cam to play. So that's the difference. I think. Let's see. I think Edelman is a better volume play if Cam plays than AJ Brown, but I think I'd still rather play AJ Brown, all things considered, just because I like the upside of him so much more. All right, Miles, I see your question. Let me get through this Bengals and Ravens game real quick, and I'll answer you in just a moment. All right, so the Ravens are favored by 13.5, which is just still an astronomical number. The over-under for this game is 51 points. Joe Mixon was limited in practice this week with a shin injury. He's questionable. I think he's going to play. Again, he had the chest injury last week. Mixon, bit banged up this week. He'll power through, always does. Lamar Jackson missed practice on Wednesday with a knee injury and missed Thursday's practice with an injury. He's good to go for Sunday. They'll practice in full on Friday. Marquise Brown was a full participant in practice this week with a knee injury, and Mark Andrews was limited with a thigh injury. Andrews always powers through. I'm not excited about Joe Burrow, but they could be in the position to throw a lot, especially if Baltimore gets up early on them. We know that Cincinnati is designed around just letting Joe Burrow throw it 45 times a game. So there is an upside here with Boyd and Higgins if you have to. I'm still not confident starting A.J. Green now at this point. It's going to be Boyd and Higgins moving forward for me, unless something drastically changes with A.J. Green and his performance. I'm not overly excited about Boyd or Higgins, but again, with Green Bay and Detroit on a bye, with the uncertainty around some of these other games heading into the weekend, these are decisions that you have to make. I think Boyd is a safe option, but you do have to lower your expectations just a little bit because of how good this Baltimore's defense is going to be. But if this does get into a point where Cincinnati is trailing, which I think we all expected them to be at some point, Boyd should be a fine play, all things considered. Joe Mixon. Oh boy. I talked up Joe Mixon all last week, and my God did he come through, right? He came through in a monster way. But this week against Baltimore, I'm scared. I'm scared, and the reason why I'm scared is because, like, this just has game script written all over it. Let me pull it up right now. So, the next handful of weeks for Joe Mixon is the following. It's Baltimore this week, Indianapolis next week, Cleveland, then Tennessee, then a bye week. Coming out of the bye, it's Pittsburgh, but then it's Washington, the Giants, Miami, Dallas. Like, it's just a run. I'm always going to go down with the ship. And I am a firm believer in Joe Mixon, the talent. But if this game goes the way that Vegas is expecting it to, I understand why you don't start Joe Mixon. I'm still planning on doing it. Actually, the decision I'm currently facing right now is A.J. Brown or Joe Mixon. And in this position, I'm probably going to play Joe Mixon, all things considered, just because I would rather start a running back than a wide receiver in a vacuum. But I'm still, I got a lot of questions surrounding Joe Mixon. I'm very interested to see what happens this week with him. I'm concerned, but I'm still going to play him because I believe in the talent, all things considered. With Baltimore, Lamar is up. Mark Andrews, you're playing, obviously. And Hollywood Brown. I'm in. The Hollywood Brown breakout game is going to happen this week, and that makes me very, very sad. This week in Dynasty, I offered Chris Carson for Le'Veon Bell and Hollywood. It was a deal where I felt like I needed a tier 2 or tier 3 wide receiver, just like a mid-tier guy to put me over the top. I was fine trading Chris Carson. I got a stable of running backs. And bringing in Le'Veon Bell, while it might not be an exciting name for some, I'm actually really excited about the volume for him. I went through some of his game log last year, and I saw a lot of hope for the future. So I was fine coming down on running back just a bit to go up at wide receiver. I felt like it was a pretty good deal, all things considered. So I wanted to try and get Hollywood while I could, and I have a feeling that I can't after this week. But with the Ravens, I'm avoiding their backfield. I am sitting Ingram. I'm sitting Dobbins. I'm sitting Gus Edwards. You just can't do it. You are going to give yourself a stroke every single Sunday trying to figure out which one to start. If you can start any of them, just during the game itself, you're going to pull your hair out if you start Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards gets a third down carry at the 2-yard line, at the goal line, or if J.K. Dobbins takes a 40-yard pass to the house. It's going to be an absolute nightmare for you the rest of the season, and that stinks because if they were all just one player, they would be great for fantasy football purposes, but unfortunately there's 3 of them and not 1. Even if it was just 2, that would be good, but it's 3, and that just fucking sucks. Alright, let's go back to the chat here real quick. Will Michael Thomas start? Yes, Thomas is going to start, and you have to play him because he's Michael Thomas. Colts defense or Pittsburgh's defense? I'm going to play Pittsburgh's defense. And Dalvin Cook is probably the safest start of the week, all things considered, facing that awful Seattle defense. Alright, actually, this is the last game we have to cover. Oh my, we've been powering through this. Wait a second. So I admittedly, I have blown through most of these games, but still, the fact that I'm able to cover 15 games now in about an hour and 45 minutes, Oh, that's gonna make my life so much easier. Yeah, this is gonna be the new format going forward. So if you missed it, I really liked the idea of doing every single game on a preview and review basis for a number of reasons. A lot of it was kind of, admittedly, a bit of a hack, but that's just from a business and analytical side of things. It was more so an algorithm hack. But then it just became way more than I thought it was going to be, especially because I was taking 15 minutes to cover every single game, which I could easily do for this, all things considered. But so the plan for this moving forward is to do a live stream like this on either Thursday night or Friday night, and then I'm going to chop it up into individual games and upload it as those. So you can get either the full version or you can get the mini version, depending on what one you want. The full version is also going to be uploaded as a podcast, and all of my game notes are going to be uploaded on the website, ffvulture.com. So now that I got that plug out of the way, of course, you can follow me on all social media platforms at ffvulture. Let's get into our final game, the Cardinals and the Jets. So, let's, where are my notes here? There we go. The Cardinals are road favorites at 6.5. The over/under for this game is 47.5. Joe Flacco is starting for the Jets with Sam Darnold being out due to that AC joint sprain. Rashad Perriman was a non-participant in practice this week, still battling that ankle injury. Le'Veon Bell, full participant off the IR. He's up and active. And let's just dive right into this, shall we? Arizona, Kyler Hopkins, you're up. Kenyon Drake, you're up. If Kenyon Drake can't get it done versus the Jets, then I will sound the panic alarm. I've tried really hard not to hit it so far. I definitely see the cause for concern and why people are doing it. As somebody who traded for Kenyon Drake, I have a different experience with them so far throughout this course of the season. People drafted him in the second round, maybe even the back of the first if you were really antsy for him. And so you have that draft capital tied into him. Me, I don't. I've talked about this before, I traded in Dynasty. I traded Aaron Jones I traded Aaron Jones, a bag of Doritos, and a bag of Cheez-Its for Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, and Mecole Hardman. So my relationship with Kenyon Drake is very, very different. I bought low on him, and now I'm just waiting and seeing what's going to happen with him going forward. I thought last week he had a great matchup versus Carolina, and I thought we all did, like this was just a common thing of start Kenyon Drake versus the Panthers, and it didn't happen. It didn't come through for you. But the reason why I wanted Drake specifically is one, because I like the talent, but then also the schedule coming up as the season progresses is very, very nice. But if he can't get it done versus the Jets, the worst team in the NFL bar none, then I don't know how you can start Kenyon Drake with confidence going forward. And that is a really tough pill to swallow. Again, this is a guy who you drafted in the second round. And the big thing, honestly, is just the receiving work just disappeared. The receiving work disappeared. It went to Chase Edmonds. But as a result, this Cardinals offense has struggled over the course of the past 2.5 weeks, right? So I expect the course correction. I know Cliff Kingsbury is a smart guy, right? Offensive guru. So I know he's smart enough to hopefully figure it out. And this is it. But this is it. If he can't get it done here in a game like this with such a positive game script and a positive matchup, you have to officially sound the alarm on Kenyon Drake for 2020. For the Jets, Jamison Crowder is a fine start. I know a lot of people have been questioning him because his production has come off of the back of Sam Darnold. But between Sam Darnold and Joe Flacco, here's the question. Is there a difference in the receiving core? The answer is no. It's still Jamison Crowder and nobody. So Jamison Crowder is going to be force-fed the ball. He's the best receiver very, very easily by a landslide, and there's nobody else around him. So you can still start Jamison Crowder with confidence this week versus the Cardinals defense. Le'Veon Bell, I'm up. I'm ready to go. Can I stand up for this one? Can I? Let's see. I'm going to stand up for this one. Oh, I almost hit a button. There we go. All right. Actually, I don't like this. Yeah, we're going back down. I got too excited. Let's see. There we go. All right. Whoa. There we go. So, can I? So with Le'Veon Bell, I'm ready. I'm ready for the re-emergence. I've talked about it this offseason with Bell. He was a guy who I was really looking at in the pre-draft process because the volume was there, and not only that, the natural positive regression was coming. I felt like in a game, or I guess with a team like this, the Jets were supposed to take a step forward at that time. Evidently, they haven't, but he was still a piece where no matter what, he was going to be involved. They obviously gave him a shit ton of money, and he's just the guy, right? With no Brashad Perriman, no Denzel Mims, Chris Herndon's been a non-factor. It's Le'Veon Bell and it's Jamison Crowder. And you look at the numbers he put up in 2019. The reason why people were disappointed in Le'Veon Bell last year is because of the fact that people still drafted him in the second or third round, and he didn't play like a second or third round draft pick. But when you go through some of the numbers, dude, it is so good because the receiving work was through the fucking roof. I'm just going to read you some point totals from Le'Veon Bell in half-point formats last season. 20, 14.9, 12.3, 11.8, 16.1, 14.8, 16.2, 13.3, 11.3, 10.2. Like, he was just a double-digit machine. The receiving work, 9 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets, 5 targets, 9 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets. He was a monster, and he only scored 4 touchdowns all season long. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for Le'Veon Bell moving forward. I'm trying to trade for him in every single league possible because the Le'Veon Bell reemergence is coming. And not only that, the schedule is glorious. All right, I'm going to tell you his schedule going forward the rest of the season. Arizona, the Chargers, Buffalo. Remember, the way that Buffalo's defense is constructed is they're going to give up points on the ground, but they're going to take away the pass attack. Kansas City, good defense. New England, fine defense. But then Miami again, Vegas, Seattle, the Rams, the Browns, and then New England to close out the year. He's got a lot of really good matchups going forward for the rest of the season, and I'm really excited about Le'Veon Bell moving forward. He is just a guy who I'm really trying to trade for because I don't think people actually know the price of Le'Veon Bell. And maybe rightfully so, right? This is a guy who's coming off of the hamstring injury. This Jets team is really bad, so like people have reasons to sell. But I'm trying to find the silver linings in Le'Veon Bell this season. But I think that's going to do it. I think we covered every single game so far. So let's round this up with some chat questions here. We got one final question from Jacob. Deontay Johnson, OBJ, or Mostert start 2 in a standard league. Oh boy. So I'm gonna follow my own advice that I said during this live stream. You're gonna start Deontay Johnson and you're starting Odell. I'm staying away from Mostert. I just want to see what this 49ers backfield looks like before I'm confident starting Mostert or McKinnon. With McKinnon being on fire lately, they don't have a reason to go away from him. And if that is going to be a 50-50 timeshare, I want to know what the snap counts and what the carry counts actually look like before I have any confidence starting Mostert, especially coming off an injury like he had. Deontay Johnson has a great matchup versus the Eagles, and with Odell, I don't know how you sit Odell after what he did last week. Yes, the Colts defense is very, very good, but at the end of the day, I just, how do you go away from the talent of Odell Beckham, right? So those are the two that I'm going to start. Deontay Johnson's easy. Odell Beckham might be a bit of a harder start, admittedly, but I just think you get to roll with the talent more than anything else. But I think that's going to do it. We're going to wrap up the live stream here. If you guys are new, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. We talk a lot of fantasy football on this channel. It's basically all I do. The way that this channel normally runs is I do previews and then recaps, breaking down every single game. So it's a very, very different kind of fantasy football content than you're probably used to if you listen to other podcasts that are very, very structured. And a show Monday, which is recaps. Tuesday's waivers, and then Wednesday's a free day. Thursday night preview. My structure is very, very different than what other fantasy football analysts do. So hopefully you guys stick around for that. Of course, you guys can follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. Tweet me on Twitter. That's where I answer all your start-sit questions, trade offers, waiver wire pickups, and anything else fantasy football related. My DMs are always on. And I think that is going to do it. So again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture, and I will see you next time.